From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. We're talking about the scary future of advertising or marketing. First, it's already here. It's kind of misleading and comforting for us to call it the future, because what we mean by this is that the technology and the techniques and those new conspiracies, because remember, advertising is propaganda. Advertising is inherently conspiratorial on many levels. What those new things that are like down the line are already here. These ideas, these ways of altering your decision and your perspective without your informed consent, they already exist. And they may seem like the future to us because we're nonad experts. But when insiders talk about the quote unquote future, what they really mean is something more like, which of these recent strategies that we're already doing will turn out to be the most effective at selling, our widgets or our surfboards or our condoms and quesadillas or our four-door sedans?
Well, the key to all of this stuff, as far as I'm aware, is targeting. They call it targeted ads. The idea of sending something directly to you in a way that you can understand, in a voice that is comforting or in some way triggering in a positive way, nudging, right, to you. So we can call that storatization and personalization. The idea that it is tailored to your exact experience, your exact preferences, and sometimes through things like AI, for example, could be tailored to your exact physical location based on tags, geotags, things like that, where, the system serving the ads knows where you are because of your IP address, like say in a podcast environment or a web environment, and then can serve you up stuff that's maybe more regional or more localized.
Yeah, I feel that happens too. If you use like a GPS service, you'll have, your maps or your Waze will have a little pop-up ad that says something like, hey, you fat piece of trash, there's a fast food place on exit 7. I don't know how you guys GPS handles you, but
I say, thanks, Waze, and then I hightail it to Fat Burger, which is actually a very popular chain of burger joints in California. We don't have them around here, though. I think Dr. Dre owns a steak. But let's talk more about the storatization, because that's a thing that we encounter plenty in our interaction with ad people. They want ads to appear as close to content as humanly possible. They want it to be ultimately indistinguishable from content. Therefore, let's make it a story. Let's make it have a beginning, a middle, and an end, sometimes packaged in one large piece of content where you have to wait for the story to complete. And that's a way to keep people kind of clicking and keep people guessing and make it not feel like they're being inundated or bombarded with something that's irrelevant to them, if it actually feels like something they're interested in or they want to hear, how does the story conclude? What are we talking about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were joking a little bit earlier about prophylactics, but there literally is a prophylactic company that has an entire podcast on this network, and that's what it's about. It's like for condoms, by condoms, about condoms, brought to you by condoms.
Yeah, and this stuff happens, but that doesn't necessarily, I think it's an important point to say, that doesn't necessarily make something bad or inaccurate. Like if you had done this before on a different show, we did one of the worst puns done recently, which is a brief history of underwear, and that was something that we did in partnership with an underwear company, and it worked because we were already going to talk about something like that, and it's actually a pretty solid episode, I think.
And it's just weird. I think you just need to know, listening to this, that we do have, as our roles at this company and also as our roles on this show, we have this really weird relationship with ads, and we're learning a lot about them. And
we'll walk away if there's something like we walk away from stuff if we feel like it's sinister or trashy. I want to get back to this story thing because that's why I'm bringing up that example of like a history of underwear with an underwear company. There's not censorship on us because we don't really tolerate that in a lot of the stuff we do, and we're fortunate in that regard. But companies do increasingly sell a story to you because it plays on people's love of stories and it plays on people's obsession with themselves. I think I've said it before. Everybody's favorite topic of conversation is themselves. No matter what language you speak, odds are the people you meet, their favorite word in that language is going to be their own name. And be very careful with that power because people can tell when you're trying to manipulate them with it unless you're very subtle. So this, I don't know about you guys, but this stood out to me. The idea of selling a story rather than an actual product or using a story as a means of selling. It always made me think of those really confusing cologne and perfume and high fashion ads I would see on television when I was younger, where it's like black and white and there are people lounging and they're all like cartoonishly attractive, but there's something serious going on. They're not smiling. What's happening? And then there's like weird music, and then like somebody's like desire. Or then someone's like, when I saw you, I knew. And then boom, Calvin Klein. Or the cologne name.
There's a really good one. I think it was a Gucci cologne. It's got Adam Driver in it, and he's swimming in slow motion with a horse. And it's beautifully shot, as those commercials often are with these high fashion companies like Gucci or, Calvin Klein or what have you. They're meant to feel like kind of like a cinematic vibe, like a work of art. And this one's really neat, but it's Adam Driver swimming with a horse. And then at the end, it's got some weird VO or something, and it's just some kind of fragrance. And then at the end, you see him on the beach, but he is now a Pegasus. He has horse legs. So, the implication there is that this perfume gives you horse legs. But, clearly that's not the case, but it's just funny, like, the implication in your situation, Ben, or your example, is that this perfume will make you happy. It will make you, change. Your mood will change. And those are all things that it's like you don't even need to back them up with science. You don't, because you're not really overtly saying it. You're just showing a scenario where people spritz some perfume and then all of a sudden they're happy. Or Adam Driver swims with a horse and all of a sudden he's a horseman.
Yeah. Well, in their situation, they're like, I think the ones I'm thinking about, happiness is not promised. It's just like complex,
that's right,
complicated sexual situations. And then you'll also be on a beach or something. It's unclear, but you're right about it's about the implication, right?
Yeah.
And very much is. And no, we're not saying we want to hurt these people. It's the implication. Yeah. But the thing is that this works because like human beings love stories. And in fact, one of the only things people like more than a good story is a story that they feel like they are part of or ideally starring in. And this leads to personalization. Ad agencies are learning asymmetry, the importance of asymmetry in the information war. And what that means is they're saying, hey, we don't need to just put out something that says, this vacuum cleaner is the best vacuum cleaner for the following reasons. Here are the specs of its motor. Here's our warranty, blah, blah, blah. What they're saying is, well, we don't need to tell everybody that. Let's play smart with our money. Let's target a specific group of people. Let's pour money reaching into their networks, where they live. Let's find out more about Jamila Josephine Jackson. What do these mid-20s graduate students at Notre Dame want? And how can we make what we sell part of what they want? There's nothing wrong with this, as long as you know what's going on. And for a lot of industry advocates, it's enough to have that, that Calvin Klein logo appear at the end of a piece of advertising. But that doesn't always happen, does it?
Well, that's Don Draper 101 right there. It's just the idea of selling a lifestyle or selling an idea, selling a story behind a product. It's not about what the product is. The product could very well be just as high quality or low quality or middle of the road quality as any number of other competitors. It's all about who has the best story. And that's what brands refer to this as their story. And that is a very kind of highfalutin way of saying, how can we kind of mislead you in a way? I don't know. Like it's hard to really accuse them of that because it's such an ephemeral thing that they're selling. You could ultimately argue that what they're selling isn't even real, isn't even attainable. You know, the idea of happiness, like what even is that? Like how does one, no one really knows. If people knew how to attain happiness, there would be no like therapy or antidepressants or, you know, the whole drug industry. But if you believe in the story behind, say, a Gucci bag, having a Gucci bag will make me happy or make me feel good about myself. I've been victim to that many times, like with, say, a piece of musical equipment or a pair of shoes. Something about participating in the story of that company, whether it's just the history of the company and all of the different artists that have used that thing. I feel like by jumping in and buying a, you know, Prophet synthesizer, I am now participating in the legacy that John Carpenter and Thomas Dolby and all of these amazing artists of the past are a part of. And I feel like I'm part of that too. Same with like Jordans. That's why Jordans are so brilliant, because it was Michael Jordan as like the spokesperson for his own shoe that he wore. And people want to be a part of that. People want to be a part of that legacy, and they feel like they can be like Mike if they, you know, buy the shoe. But that's not really true. There's really no guarantee that that's going to happen. If you want to be like Mike, you got to practice all the time and probably have a healthy dose of just like raw, you know, acumen and talent, which everyone's not going to have. But you still feel like you're part of that story by buying the shoe.
Well, what if you're a company that is much smaller, you know, than Reebok or what was Prophet? I don't know. I don't know much about Prophet.
Dave, it's a synthesizer.
That's a good call.
But
It's
like
a smallish company, but yeah.
But like you're a smaller company, right? And you want to somehow get your messaging out there, get your advertising out there. Let's say you're advertising online or something, or even in a podcast.
Island Poly surfboards.
Island Poly surfboards. We need to do something here. We need to get more eyes on our ads. So what we're going to do, instead of hiring a bunch of people to share this thing out, we're going to use bots. Ooh, robots. Not really robots. It's more like algorithms and computer programs. But what these companies can do, not always, is get a bunch of clicks on a particular ad or a particular post. A lot of times this is common in social media right now, and it has been for a long time, where they elevate a post by having these bots share it. And so then it gets seen by more and more people. It moves up in popularity. Then actual targets or customers see it and possibly click on it and share it. But this is really a double-edged sword, right, Ben? This isn't like just a positive thing for the company.
No, you're right, Matt. The rise of automation is inevitable. It will, if it has not yet, touch every in a human industry, and advertising is no exception. Bots can be tremendously helpful for places like Island Poly surfboards. They're a bane and a potential opportunity for the forces who, even as you hear this now, are trying to get into your head. The use of a botnet, a group of these programs, or these programs applied for a specific purpose across a large enough dimension of whatever metric, they can drastically increase engagement and therefore visibility of something on social media. But those same bots disrupt the golden grails, the information wells that advertisers need. So you can now think of, like, most people are aware of bots, and you can now think of those as an older innovation in this field. But we're talking about robots in advertising. We're talking about something else too. We're talking about drones. Like, let's say, you know, one day you've just said, I've had it up to here with these terrible Orwellian ads trying to pressure me into something or to sell me some kind of story. I woke up from a dream and I said, forget this. It's gone too far. I don't even like Coors. I don't even drink beer. What's going on? So you erase your social media. You throw away your television. You brick your smartphone. And now you only access the internet through a VPN, and you festooned it with ad blockers. But then you hear it off in the distance. Worrying as a speaker-equipped drone flits through your neighborhood, announcing the newest sales for Amazon's King Jeff holiday. And it might not be a drone. It could be an autonomous vehicle with a speaker system on it, and it's just rolling through your neighborhood on part of its daily circuit to tell you about these advertisements that are targeted toward your neighborhood, because whether it's a drone or an AV, the vehicle's route has been determined by the information of the people around you, the Zillow rating, you know what I mean? The local grocery stores, how do they vote, things like this. You are a bystander, but now you are a bystander in the informational crossfire. It's a situation you can't escape unless you move or unless you do something real weird with your HOA. I don't know, but this can happen, and it's not too far away from becoming reality.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it feels like sort of an extension of like old school political ad campaigns where you'd have like a truck rolling around a certain area with like a recorded message talking about a particular candidate. If you've seen the movie Nashville, the political candidate who's kind of like plays this like sort of specter part who looms over the whole movie, you only ever hear him in the form of a loudspeaker attached to a van with his logo on the side. So that's definitely kind of like a classic, spamming of people's ears with an ad. But you're right, if you get it targeted and they're autonomous and you can deploy potentially thousands of them to different areas where they will make the most impact, yeah, I would say that's pretty pernicious and could be considered noise pollution, could be considered a lot of things. Yeah.
Well, imagine this. You're a devoted customer of, I don't know, some fast food chain, and they offer you several $100s, maybe even $1,000 to have one of these drones like established in your backyard or in your front yard, where it has its home where it goes back to every night and charges. But your whole neighborhood, it's too bad. Your whole neighborhood is now targeted by your drone that you're getting paid for.
Right. And there's not a law specifically against that. There are some FAA things with drones, right? But, maybe it's just a really kitted out Roomba, or one of those lovely DARPA dog robots with a speaker on it. But this isn't as far away as it might seem. And then there's another thing, holograms. Holograms made a huge splash a few years back. They were used for posthumous concerts, right? And everyone was like, we saw the Tupac concert. It wasn't really him, but it was a hologram. But the potential for shenanigans goes way past that. We are in the world of deep fakes. There is not really a way to stop it. Imagine a world in which your favorite celebrities, historical figures, whatever, suddenly appear on screen or in person touting a product. The celebrity involved may have no knowledge of how their likeness is being used. Whose Island Polly, says Morgan Freeman. I don't even surf. Whatever. These are examples we're making up, but the company involved might have no need for transparency. There may already be an agreement that could happen, and that's where it gets worse. Imagine the second just as likely scenario. Forget celebrities, folks. I mean, people shouldn't worship celebrities anyway. It's sort of silly. But imagine this. You have signed up for an app or a service. Maybe it's Amazon Prime. Maybe it's Instagram, something like that. And buried in the terms and conditions, which are by design difficult to read, you grant that company the right to use your likeness as that company sees fit. People are familiar. Social media usually requires you to allow them to share your pictures, right? But if it's just a likeness, even though this already exists in still photographs, imagine if it's in voice usage, in video, in holograms as well. This is a world quite possibly on the way now in which a company may sell your likeness as a legal deep fake. Next thing you know, you get messages, right, from maybe your friends and family, especially if they're less tech savvy. And they're like, hey, why'd you send me that video or Snapchat telling me about how much you love belligerent Ben's Bean Fresh coffee cappuccinos, whatever. And I think it gets weirder the more specific it is.
The tagline is, that's a mouthful.
Nailed it.
That's probably coffee.
Yeah. Hey, happy birthday, Aunt so-and-so. I love you very much. I love you almost as much as the new endless appetizers deal that's going on just at the Applebee's right up the street from you. Anyway, have a great one. Tell cousin insert name here I said hello. Zip, boom. I never said that, you might think, but that thought will arrive too late. Well, I don't know. What do you think? Crazy?
No, I mean, it's well within the realm of possibility, if not already existing. And here's an example of something that I've experienced personally, and I've been seeing some posts about it on social media. Some kind of evangelical type groups are sending out what appears to be handwritten letters to individuals, using your name and saying that they're praying for you in particular, right? And I've got to wonder, is it really handwritten, or is it generative in a way that makes it look like it's handwritten and they just know your name based on the data that they have collected? But the initial reaction of getting a handwritten letter is you're a little more invested and you're going to read it and pay a little closer attention. It's also got that thing that Chick-fil-A does. I forget the term for it. Maybe it's disfluency, where if you're seeing like letters that are maybe in the wrong size or like uppercase mixed with lowercase, your brain kind of latches onto it a little more readily, and then you thereby take in the message more clearly. One that I saw online looked like it was written by a small child, because it was written with this kind of like, learning to write for the first time kind of like handwriting. But it was all this religious message that seemed, communication-wise, at a higher level than what I was seeing in terms of the actual text. And then I got one too that was very similar. So I don't know if the evangelicals just have like a beat on this, or if this is something that's going to be a larger thing, but it's fascinating. And I got to wonder, what does that operation look like?
Yeah, it's cross industry. It's happening in a lot of places because a letter that appears handwritten is already its own kind of disfluency in the mail.
Right, precisely.
Because people get so much spam. And I love the idea of a kid writing someone, like, "Dear Uncle Matthew, the APR on the new Ford F-150 is below 4%. Like, that's hilarious.
Jimmy, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me earlier?
It's certainly something they've been doing for a long time, like making things appear to be a check for you, when in fact it is an offer in the form of a check that, it's obviously not cashable in any way, shape, or form. But if you are looking through mail, usually the kinds of things people actually pay attention to in the mail are checks or bills. So if they can make something look like one of those things so you won't just throw it away, then they can do that. So all I'm saying is I think we're going to see more advanced versions of that kind of trickery, probably in the digital realm too, because everyone's gotten wise to what these targeted ads look like. So they need to make them appear more and more and more like something that you want to see, something that you want to look at, something that you want to, like a story, like you said.
Yeah. Well said. This, the dark side of this, the Sith side of this, is taking advantage of people who are not maybe in the best financial situation by sending like a shady credit card consolidation offer that is totally designed to look like a final notice bill. I think that's pretty unclean. But this goes far beyond it, because now what we were just talking about is what I would phrase as infiltration of nonad space.
Yes.
People are inundated with ads, so people have become blind to like traditional advertisements. So this stuff, like looking like a handwritten letter, looking like a personal message, it cognitively puts people in this is not an ad space. But there's another front. It gets even worse here. You're on LinkedIn, you're on social media, a friend, a colleague, someone you don't know super well, messages you about a really cool opportunity or a sale, and you know it's not a bot. They're talking to you about it. It's clearly a person talking to you about it. Or you're hanging out at your local, your local pizza joint or whatever, and one of your friends strikes up a conversation. They're like, "Oh man, I just went on this awesome hike and I love it because I got these new hiking boots. I feel like I could hike forever. And you're like, "You don't have to do your own echoes. We're not on a show. We're just eating pizza." This happens all the time in general. We communicate with each other like that. And when it does, it's called word of mouth. Word of mouth is the nuclear option in terms of effectiveness in advertising. Human beings will obviously go with what they feel is the testimony of someone they know way over some letter or a 30-second spot on television. But what happens when that person at the pizza place was incentivized to casually advertise something to you in person? and say, hey, we'll give you these shoes for free. Just make sure when you're hanging out with your pals, Matt and Noel in Mission Control, that you mention these shoes and how much better they make hikes. A world in which the people you trust the most are personally turned to catch you and all their other loved ones unawares. This is already happening. But just like the early days of the Terminator franchise, it's kind of easy to tell. And here's where it happens. If you were in the US, I know you have experienced this. If you were in the US and you weren't born during the pandemic, I know you have experienced this. If you are listening to this show and you're a year and a half old, congratulations, you are way ahead of the curve. But like, have you guys ever been at, back when there were a lot more in-person department stores, did you ever go to like a
Marshalls?
A Marshalls or something? Yeah, perfect, Matt. And then you're buying whatever, and then there's the moment where the cashier says, so also, would you like to get this credit card or this, rewards program because it gives you X amount of blah, 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 and all these goodies. And they don't want to say it to you. And they know you don't want to hear it. But you're not a monster. So you wait politely. And at the end, you say like, no, thanks. I wouldn't like a rewards card or whatever. Has that ever happened to you guys?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, it's like you said, you kind of got to power through it because you don't want to be rude. But you also know you're not going to go for it. So you just kind of got to let the person do their spiel, and then you just politely decline.
I have two things here. Just happened to me at a Marshalls, and I had a conversation with the cashier who was working the front there who offered it to me. I asked her, well, how many of those are you, like, do you have to sell? You personally in a day or a week or whatever. And she gave me a number, which was surprisingly high. And then she gave me the number for a week and a month, and how much the managers, regional managers, and all these groups come down on just, individual staff members, not necessarily at Marshalls. Sorry. I hope Marshalls. I really like your stuff. It's cool. I dig it.
But it's a quota. You're saying it's a quota.
Yes, it's a big quota, and there's huge incentives attached to it, as well as sticks, that are swung if you don't meet it. But what I'm saying is that kind of reward system exists in so many places with so many companies. I love this idea, Ben, of they're in a way incepting others to make you sign up for the smallest of thing. But if you bring your friend on, you as an individual consumer that brought in another customer get maybe $5, maybe $20, maybe even $100, depending on how valuable that one extra customer is to the company.
Yeah. And now imagine, I guess this will be our last disturbing scenario for the episode. Because I'm sitting on the floor of a hotel right now, so I gotta walk around at some point. But like, imagine we get together and we're having like Thanksgiving dinner, right? It's all of our families together. You're just listening along at home too. We're all together, and then the person that you like the most, that you only see at these kind of events, is like, hey, uncle or aunt so-and-so, or hey, blah, blah, blah. How you doing? Oh, that's great. Oh, cool. How's your thing? Here's my thing. Yeah, I am actually doing blah, blah, blah. And they're like, hey, by the way, you like energy drinks, right? You like, yeah, because you still like, I'm working out a lot more too. I love Brondo. It's got electrolytes. It's what plants crave. And then you're saying, hey, is that a line from Idiocracy? And they're like, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I just love Brondo. I dig it. And then all of a sudden you realize,
keep it out of the irrigation system, bro.
Right. And then you realize like they've been turned. That could happen. And then maybe they have, like you said, Matt, maybe they have something on their phone, some sort of app that is like, we have caught, X amount of organic mentions of insert product here, which means, boom, your coupon is in the mail, or your, whatever. You've got that many Brondo points. I don't know what that would call them. I'm using Brondo because I think this is one of the scariest future ad possibilities, and I don't want to accuse a real company of doing it yet. But I can't wait to hear what other folks in the crowd have encountered. Have you, like Noel, received strange handwritten letters? I sure have. Have you had an awkward conversation with somebody at the counter of a store and said, look, I know we both know you have to say this. How many people do you have to sell on this thing? Like, let us know. We haven't proposed a solution yet, because there's not really one. This is just an accelerating conspiracy.
For that last one, Wells Fargo figured out the solution. You just make people up.
That's right. They did that. Yeah.